Advancing the cause of liberty takes more than just coming up with ideas. It means making them happen. This is Society and the State. Life, liberty, and your pursuit of happiness. Now, your hosts, Connor Boyack and Brian Hyde.
Welcome to our Society and the State podcast. Connor Boyack here, along with yours truly, Brian Hyde. And Connor, I'm going to put forth this opinion. Feel free to disagree, but I think we all have status symbols. Things that depending on our stage of life or depending on our state of mind, give us this indication that we are all right, or that we're successful, or we've arrived.
I think that's inherent in being part of society, right? We live around other people. We take our cues from them. We interact with them. And so to some extent, I think it's understandable that we would have these kind of shortcuts by which we can judge one another. Like, are you someone I want to pay attention to? Are you someone I should show respect to? Are you above me? Are you beneath me? So it makes sense to some degree that there are these kind of, as I said, shortcuts where we don't have to learn the life history of each person to determine, the degree of our interaction or respect or whatever. So I get it, but as we'll perhaps get into, I think here, there are some severe problems with that approach.
It's the kind of thing that would lead you to say, everything I need to know about you, I can tell by what you pulled up in.
I judged your book by its cover.
Oh, perfect.
As an author, ouch.
Okay, so I'm going to put you on the spot here a little bit, but I'll invite you to do the same for me. What would you consider a status symbol? And I'm not necessarily talking about some ostentatious display of wealth, but just at your stage of life, what would you say, I would really love to have this for whatever reason, it would just make me happy?
I think for people like me, people in my circle, your status symbol is your social media profile. It's your LinkedIn profile. It's, your work experience, your resume. It's how beautiful your Instagram photos are, how many likes you get, how many shares your content gets, how many followers do you have? Again, these are the shortcuts to say, like, oh my gosh, like last night I ran into someone who travels the world with his family. He is a very successful former entrepreneur. They sold all their stuff. They travel the world. They are sponsored. They have all these people pay them to, this is promoted by such and such, or thanks to such and such. Check out their product. And so they finance their life from these sponsored posts, and they have beautiful photos in like the most remote locations, and their whole family's photogenic, and they have a huge following. So they've got that great status symbol of not only their photos and their idyllic life, that we all imagine, but oh my gosh, they have this many followers on Instagram. They're huge. They're important.
Okay. I love that answer, by the way, though. That's I think that's a good place to start. It doesn't have to be necessarily this is the indication of my success, but just something that would make me really happy. And this is going to show you what a terrible stage of life I'm apparently at right now.
Oh, let's get into it.
A really quality pair of shoes.
All right.
To me, that's kind of a status symbol. Look, we can all go to Payless and buy the whatever, cheapest shoe, just whatever it is that's going to, make it look like I'm not walking around in rags. But over time, and thanks to conversations I've had with guys like Jeffrey Tucker, who places kind of a premium on, your appearance and how you present yourself, I have come to understand that a really well-made pair of shoes is not only a good investment in yourself because it's comfortable and it represents something that will last a long time, but it also depicts, this is a person who knows what he's about. So a good pair of Allen Edmonds shoes.
Never heard of the guy, but I'll go Google it now.
That would be somewhat of a status symbol to me, much more than a Brodozer big lifted diesel pickup would be at this point.
And that's what I was going to next suggest, of course, is the traditional status symbol is the car.
Sure.
Right. And so you see the salesman who isn't doing very well. He's trying, he's hustling, but he's struggling to make pay the bills. But oh my gosh, he has like an amazing car. And why? Because he wants to symbolize to his potential clients that he is successful so that they will be more likely to do business with him. Even if he's struggling to make that happen, that's definitely a symbol that I think oftentimes people try and put forward is the visual, superficial, how do I represent myself to other people? How well do I dress? How nice is my bag? Like back in school, it was who had the latest JanSport backpack,
yep.
Right? And you would kind of immediately be able to take cues from people like, oh my gosh, their parents must be rich, or he has a big allowance, or, it's so easy for us to judge the superficial that we see because, again, it is a shortcut. It's hard for us to invest the time to really get to know everyone that we see.
And yet it doesn't really tell the whole story about the person. And so as we begin here, I want to make clear, I'm not, if you want something nice or if you want some status symbol that is, a little more ostentatious, more power to you. Every one of us has a different thing that brings us satisfaction. But at its heart, there's a flaw in status in that we're looking to others for clues about who we are and what really is important to us, whether we're comparing ourselves to them, hoping to find something that gives evidence, well, actually, I am better than them, or whether we're just trying to find self-worth through other people approving us.
I think there are broader issues here than just for our own individual life, of course. When you have a society of people who are taking their cues from other people of what is popular or what is best, isn't that like there's some song about that, about like, you don't need to wear all the makeup, you don't need to buy all the clothes. I'm not going to try singing it or even remembering her name, but it's a powerful song to say, you do you, right? Like, don't worry about others of people. You don't need to max out your credit cards, and you don't need to wear all the makeup and change yourself to impress other people. And so you think about, in a society that becomes so consumer driven and materialistic, what are the implications of that for the electorate, right? For just government, for society, for consumer finance, maxing out your credit cards to keep up with the Joneses because we need the latest stuff, right? Or spending your time, rather than connecting with the person next to you, framing your Instagram shot in just the right way so it conveys, how cool your life is. I saw something on Facebook just the other day. It was, I think it was this artistic portrayal to kind of drive home this point, but it was this Instagram shot, and it was like, I can't remember what it was. It was like a dish of food, right? And it looked very well presented. And so that's what you see. And then in the next shot, they show it zoomed out of like, okay, look, they held the phone up to here to get this tight shot, but pan out and look at the big shot. And the big shot was the kitchen was a disaster. The baby's on the high chair screaming, right? Everything's a mess. The dog doesn't have his food. Like the actual environment, the real life tells a much different story. And you said that a moment ago, like it doesn't show the full picture. And for those of us who want the truth, who want to understand the world around us, you need the full picture. And that's where I think these status symbols and the superficial approach really does a disadvantage to us.
Memes have become a very handy way to communicate truths and sometimes have some fun in the process. My wife she'd probably appreciate this. There was a meme that says how she sees herself, and it's a picture of a potato. And then the other side of it is how I see her, and it's a picture of a loaded, baked potato with everything on it. I like that's kind of a cool way of expressing it. I'm glad you took it to consumerism, though, because we could not have this discussion without talking about the fact that the advertising industry is a multi-billion-dollar industry. We've talked about propaganda. We've talked about how people can be manipulated. And no matter how you slice it, the advertising industry has the eyeballs of the masses. And what kind of messages do they send to us about what it takes to have a life that's considered even not just even successful, but just normal? I mean, look at a beer commercial and tell me, what does a beer commercial teach you about what happiness is supposed to be?
Well, it's like the Nike commercials too. Nike doesn't sell shoes. They sell athleticism. They sell happiness. They sell success. Apple doesn't sell computers. Apple sells lifestyle. And that aspirational marketing is very powerful. But one of the biggest drivers of marketing is not the aspirational, it's the fear. And in marketing, fear of missing out, fear of not being, up on the latest trend is a very powerful force. When you say choosy moms choose Jif, right? It's like, well, you want to be a choosy mom, like, or if 9 out of 10 doctors say this, or,
don't be some substandard mom who chooses the store brand.
Right. And so your behavior is driven based on the fear of missing out or the fear of being left in the dust, not relating to other people. And you begin to change your life in a way that appeals to other people, that is in line with other people. And when you look throughout history, we revere the very people who deviated from, especially when you get into, despotism and all the big problems, but even just generally speaking, the people who forged their own path and who were, the what was the word we used the other day? The self-taught learners. What was our word?
Autodidacts.
The autodidacts of the world, right? We celebrate these people, and yet we have such a hard time in our life because of these status symbols deviating from that, because we feel that we have to be part of it. We have to represent ourselves the same way. If everyone else's LinkedIn profile is amazing, mine has to be too. Otherwise, I'm not going to be as successful. And it drives our behavior, I think, in potentially destructive ways, because we're not doing things that we think are right, that we have rationally decided to do. Instead, we are emotionally and psychologically reacting to the environment around us that is so superficially driven.
See, fear and status, they're like drugs. And frankly, I look at my own life and I can see times when, you know what, absolutely, I fed on fear or I fed on status. And I think we can, I'm not trying to point fingers. I'm not trying to make anybody feel guilty.
Oh, that's boring.
But I think sometimes we're blind to it in our haste to fit in and to feel normal or feel like, well, at least I don't stand out like a sore thumb. Albert Einstein, I have a quote for you from him. He said, "Small is the number of them who see with their own eyes and feel with their own hearts."
What do you think that means?
I think too many of us are living according to a script that is being provided to us either by someone, a copywriter on Madison Avenue, or our own expectations of what we think others expect of us. And not enough of us are actually asking the kind of questions about what our lives are supposed to be that we should be asking. And that's ultimately where I really wanted to see this discussion go, is how do you know what your life is really supposed to be about?
I, for a long time, was known as someone who always had the latest Apple gadget, right? I defined myself in some small part. This wasn't a huge part of my life, but I was known to be a big Apple fanboy, and I'd watch all the keynotes, and I'd, when Steve Jobs would get up and say, "Oh, and one more thing," right? Yeah, here we go. And I would read the MacRumors.com to be up on the latest, and I would upgrade my iPhone to the latest one, even as everyone teased and said, "Oh, the Android phone has had that for 2 years." Right? "Oh no, but Apple's done it better," right? And so that was who I was, and yet my consumer behavior, my decisions, my status, right? Because I liked the status of being connected to absorbing a little bit of Apple's brand as my own. And so my decisions were being driven by the perception of others. I wanted to be the conversation starter. "Oh, look at the new gadget I got." And I wanted that, but I was not making good rational decisions. And now, for example, the latest iPhone came out. Okay, it's got some cool features, but I don't need that. I'm fine. And I'm not going to immerse myself in all the marketing anymore. I'm not going to read all the latest rumors. When I have a functional need to upgrade my phone, when there's a compelling case to be made, then I'll make that smart consumer decision, but I'm not going to do it just because of the status that I would have by having the latest thing. And it's tough because you see other people have the latest one, then you get a little bit of jealousy because you're like, "Hey, cool, how cool would that be, right? Look at the new features." But at the end of the day, the question is do you actually need that or not? And what are the disadvantages to living your life in a way where you are driven by what the status demands of you? Because the status doesn't sleep. It's always updating and upgrading and changing. And if you want to keep that status for yourself, you want to keep affiliation with, that brand or that business or that cause, you have to be changing. You have to be adapting to always be up to date with the latest. And I think that poses problems because you are not your own person. You are, a part of you is being guided by the actions of other people.
I've heard it said that the quickest way to become unhappy is to continuously compare yourself to others. And I think there's a lot of wisdom to that. Dr. Gary North had another way of putting it. The people who compare themselves to others, the keeping up with the Joneses mentality. Mm-hmm. He says what people don't realize is that's kind of a form of modern idolatry. And he says, let me tell you the name of the God that they're serving. More. And he says, more is a jealous God and will never be satisfied. And he says it kind of tongue in cheek, but I think there's great wisdom in recognizing that it's easy to get caught up in this. And so I'm going to throw a couple questions out here. Paul Rosenberg is a pretty deep thinker, and he had posed these questions just so if you want to snap out of that status-driven or fear-driven mentality. These are the kind of questions that you should ask yourself at some point in your life. And they include, what is life about anyway? In other words, what's the point of what we do? And then he asks things like, what's the purpose of a career? And why should I care about it above everything else? I liked this one too. Why should I glorify the existing system? Why should I agree to support it?
Because the presumption so often is that you go along with the status quo. The presumption is that you behave like other people do. You adopt the same brands. You believe the same ideas. You do the same things and buy the same stuff. And that's a powerful presumption, because the moment that you deviate from it, you are the other. You are different. You're not part of the pack.
And that's actually one of the final questions he asks here. What's the purpose of being like everyone else? Why am I so afraid to be different?
And this is something that with our work at Libertas Institute, we've increasingly honed in on, is the power of asking why. For example, when we produce videos, Nichelle on our team, who helps with the videos, we'll sit down, we'll go over the issue, we'll go over a script, and throughout the process, we ask why. Why does this matter? Why should it care? Why should other people care? Why do we want things to change? And then, you'll come up with an answer and you'll say, okay, well, why is that important? Right? Why should anyone care about that? And the more you ask why, it really justifies you to analyze the decisions that you make. When you have to come up with a reason, and if your reason is, well, everyone else is doing it, right? Or I like the way I feel because other people think I'm cool. That's a very external motivating factor. And I think what you're driving at, Brian, is that society is better and we are better as individuals when we have the internal motivating factor, when we have our own reasons for why we do what we do. We believe in a cause. We have a need. And when we have our own reasons, that is a moral action. It's an acceptable, beneficial action. But when it's just, well, everyone else is doing it, I have to copy them, or I want to be like them, or I like how I feel when they see me because I now have that symbol, that, especially in the aggregate, becomes potentially destructive, as we were talking about earlier.
I think there's a sense, too, of safety and conformity. And I'm not trying to paint with too broad of a brush here, but there's a lot of the society that we live in that is based on conformity. And, conformity is rewarded, and people who are not conforming are often singled out, they're ostracized, or they're made to feel different. Anybody who, for instance, works at a business where you've had to undergo sensitivity training, they'll bring in a facilitator, and that facilitator is using crowd manipulation techniques to build consensus. And if someone is resisting the training that's being delivered, the goal of that facilitator is to get everybody lined up gently against that person, and through peer pressure, we're going to bring him or her into conformity. And, this is not something you'll encounter everywhere, but there are probably people nodding their heads going, oh, yeah, we had to sit through that. That was uncomfortable. So I guess the central message here that we're trying to get across today goes back to what Albert Einstein said: seeing with your own eyes, feeling with your own heart. In order to do that, you're going to have to consciously choose to break with the script that everybody else is following, to walk away from the trough where everybody else is feeding, and do your own thing and be comfortable with it and know it's okay. In fact, really, it's the only place you're ever going to truly feel okay, because it's authentic and it's genuine.
I think we're going to be doing a future episode on the flag, the history of pledging allegiance to the flag, and how robotically every day, right, or in different scenarios, people say the pledge. We've memorized it, we say it, and we've assumed that it is a reflection of our innermost patriotic feelings. And some people choose to abstain or kneel or whatever, and that creates great controversy, as we've seen. However, I think it can also be fairly said that in this case, this example, the going along with the action would be to just say the pledge. But I know people who understand the history of the pledge, who have concerns or objections, or at least sympathize with or recognize the criticisms and the concerns. Notwithstanding those, they have made a conscious decision that for them, they feel, beneficial, they feel benefited, they feel good, they feel right in making the pledge and in going through that process. That's great, because at least they've thought about it. It's not just this rote action that everyone does. It's what we do, right? When the athletes are on the field, before they go play a game, we sing this song, right? Like, it's not part of rote practice anymore. For them, it's something meaningful. And I think that's okay. It's okay to do what everyone else is doing as long as you have a legitimate reason to do it, right?
That makes perfect sense. And again, we're not telling you you're wrong or you've been doing it wrong. Hopefully what we're suggesting with what we've been discussing today is the idea that there's a lot of things we go along with. We may not even understand the reasons, but if you stop and you ask yourself some of those questions, like, what is my life all about? What do I think is fun? I mean, is fun defined by the beer commercial I watched, or is there another way to look at life defined through my own eyes and what I feel with my own heart?
I think probably ending is best done where we started out with the suggestion I made, because it's so relevant to our lives, and it's social media. So Brian, taking your questioning to the next question, why do I post what I do on social media? Why do I choose to post the things that I do? Why do I pick those over other things? Why do I speak out this way? Why do I stay silent? Why do I post so often? Why am I scrolling hour after hour after hour on Facebook? It's this inherently social platform where other people are involved. And so it's a great way to kind of analyze what we've been discussing here of those status symbols and why you do what you do on social media. I think is a great cause for internal reflection to say, I know people who will like go on social media fasts and they'll come out of it and they'll say, yeah, I missed getting updates and stuff, but oh my gosh, like I went on a walk through nature. It was green outside.
The world actually looked normal.
Yeah. And they'll come back and they'll say how amazing it was. And they'll say, I'm not ditching Facebook or whatever, right? Like I'm still going to use it, but not nearly as much as I did before, or it's not going to control me the way that it did. And it's those comments, I think, that are especially reflective of what we're discussing here, that so often when you're driven by the status or the perception of others, you're not acting, you're being acted upon.
Okay. So look, you can comment. Believe it or not, we have this wonderful feature on societyandthestate.com. This is episode 38, so societyandthestate.com/38. You can listen to this podcast and then leave comments, maybe tell us where you think we're wrong.
Or on the Facebook page, too.
Or the Facebook page. We have many, many options, but I think these are questions that are worth asking. It's not navel-gazing. It just may be an opportunity to learn something about yourself you didn't know.
Thanks for listening to Society and the State. For show notes, archives, and more great content, visit societyandthestate.com.